Missy has told you, I am a mother, and as Julia has told you, I have a dog. So my first question is, who's going to come and walk my dog this afternoon? Okay, think about that and come and find me afterwards. He's very, very cute. Behind me here, you're going to see a number of visuals, some slides, just some photos. They're all Venetian carnival masks. So what I would like you to think about as I'm talking and sharing my personal story is, what mask do you wear? What do you hide from people? And what do you make sure at all costs that people don't know about you? And what impact does that have on your life? So my story is about postpartum depression. I have a son who now is 3. He was born on June 13th, 2008. Does anybody remember June 13th, 2008? It was Friday the 13th. We should have known at the time that that was an interesting sign, but we decided to go for it anyway. I had a scheduled C-section because he was breech. So the doctor said to me the day before, he really needs to come out. Do you want to have this baby today or tomorrow? And my husband and I went, tomorrow. Yeah, definitely tomorrow. So we had that baby, and the first month was great. And he was adorable. We looked at him sleeping in his bassinet and thought, this is just the biggest blessing ever. We patted each other on the back because we were just such amazing parents. We were calm, cool, collected. We had it all together. Well, then he hit 2 months and started getting fussy. And then we realized babies don't actually sleep, or ours didn't anyway, at all, some days. And if you've ever gone through any sort of sleep deprivation at all, you will understand why it is that it's used as a form of torture. So very quickly I became fairly miserable. He was really fussy. He had to be bounced all the time. And the only benefit to that I could see, aside from some nice baby cuddles, is that I lost my pregnancy weight pretty fast. Otherwise, it was kind of a burden. So I started to get very angry, actually, is really what my experience was about. And my frustration was that he just would not do what I wanted him to do. So as somebody who is a type A control freak, yeah, I'm a control freak, that was a really, really difficult thing for me to deal with. So I'm going to just, as I go through, read you some excerpts of my writing. And as Missy has said, I started this blog on January 1st of this year. So this is after all of this had happened. But this is basically my experience in those early days. This is when I was struggling so much with my son and my inability to figure out how to be a mother. When I couldn't take it, I would summon my loudest inside my head voice and swear at the universe, at his crying, at mine. I swore at my inability to cope. I swore at battling the same things day after day after day. I swore out loud some days to myself through my sobs as my tears ran over my words and the guilt and misery and hopelessness that came with them. So that frustration for me turned into rage. And that is actually a very common symptom of depression, but it's not something that's talked about a lot. So I had no idea. I just thought I was the worst mother in the history of mothers across the entire universe ever. And that's not a very good way to feel when you've just had your first child. So as you can probably imagine, being married to me at that time wasn't really a very fun experience. So my experience with rage was really unexpected. I don't really consider myself an angry sort of a person, so I didn't know what to do with that. And it's a really difficult thing to describe to people. I would drive around and I would see condo signs for sale, and I would think, all I want to do is buy a condo and go and live there by myself. Horrible way to feel when you have a family. I was so angry one day that I phoned a friend of mine in floods of tears and said, I want to throw this child out the window. I will tell you right now, that is a really common way for mothers to feel. So this is how I described rage when I finally wrote about it on my blog. Imagine a time you totally lost your temper. When you were so consumed by anger, you felt it as a physical thing, adrenaline racing through your body and blocking out all rational thought. When your first instinct as though it were primal, was to throw something so it would shatter you into 1,000 pieces and break whatever spell had overtaken you. That's what it felt like for me for my son's first 2.5 years. So my son took a little bit of the brunt of that. Later on in that post, I wrote something that I thought I would never tell anybody ever. I had my mask firmly in place. And that is that one time, I actually hit him. It was just a slap on the thigh, and it was just an instinctive thing because I was so angry. And then he cried, and then I cried. And it was the worst day of my entire life. So the other person that took a little bit of the brunt of my anger was, of course, my husband. So finally, one day in November of 2009, so almost 18 months after my son was born, my husband, while I was out of the province, sent me an email and basically said, if you don't get this sorted out, I am leaving and I am having sole custody of our child. And I knew he was right, because there was no way that I could have taken care of my son. And I didn't blame him at all for wanting to leave. So this is what happened after that. Once I got on medication, after he made that ultimatum, things got a bit better. It took the edge off at least, but I was on a low dose and it didn't do enough, and I didn't know enough to know I wasn't better. A year later, almost to the day, my husband and I had a rager of a fight, precipitated by a tough time getting my son to sleep. We stood in our garage and yelled at each other. We screamed, and my husband is not a screamer. I felt like he didn't understand, and he didn't, but neither did I, though that's a whole other post. I didn't realize and couldn't see what the past 2.5 years had been like for him. I thought that was it, the end of our marriage, the end of my family, and the end of my experience as a mother. I cried more that night than ever before in my life, and I'm crying. I thought I was going to have to walk away, so I stepped up to leave the garage. I had only taken a single step when he said it. I was in an abusive relationship for a year. His voice was full of anger, hurt, and fear. I paused in what was both a split second and a whole lifetime, during which I went from wondering how I didn't know about this to realizing he meant me. He meant me. I really did think that was the end of it. How do you go from somebody saying that to you in that kind of a situation to recovering from that and carrying on? So what I did after that is a whole bunch of things. I saw a whole bunch of different doctors, got on some different medication, started seeing a psychiatrist, and a bunch of those things contributed to me having a massive breakdown in April of this year. And I sat there one day when I was at home with my son, when I couldn't deal with it anymore, and I couldn't see how I would ever be a mother to this child. And I phoned my parents and just said, you need to come and get him right now. And that wasn't the first time I had to do that. So they came to get him, and I was alone in my house. And I had a bottle of sedatives in my cupboard. And all I could see in that moment was this bottle of sedatives. And I thought, I could take that whole bottle, and I'm not even sure what would happen, but it would probably be better than this. And that scared the life out of me. So I got over that moment, and I realized I needed to do something about it. So I took a leave from work, which turned out to be 4.5 months long, and I got this sorted out. So throughout this process, I've been writing this story bit by bit on my blog. So I started my blog on New Year's Day as a, hey, I'm just going to write this out and see if it helps me get better kind of a thing. My boss found my blog within about half an hour of me setting it up. So deciding you're going to write your story of postpartum depression is all well and good, until someone you know finds your blog. I carried on. My personal philosophy is, if I'm going to write myself out of this, I'm going to write myself out of it, and I'm going to tell the truth. And I had no idea how empowering that was. I found a whole community of people who had had very similar experiences, and slowly I started to get comments like, I've been reading this, and because of you, I've decided I'm going to get help. I am so angry, and my kids don't deserve that, so I have made an appointment with my doctor. I was scared of medication for so long, and I'm going to do it. When I wrote my post on rage, which was actually in 2 parts, I held my breath and hit publish. And then I sat there refreshing and waiting for comments and thinking, I'm going to get crucified for admitting to this. And I got nothing but love. Absolute love. I got so many Me Too's. I got so many thank you for saying that comments. A lot of them were private because people don't want to admit this. But I realized that there is power in brutal honesty, in telling the one story you never thought that you would tell. So that has become what my life is about for me now, is telling that story. This is the first time I have ever told this story out loud. It's easy for me to write this. It's out there for the world to see. To say it out loud is difficult. And you all probably know that, because there are things that you simply do not tell people, because you have your mask on and you don't want them to know. So I finally took control of my story and continued to share that story and the evolution of my experience. So the good news is, my husband is sitting right there, and we made it through. So about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I made a change on my blog. I had what is called a Warrior Mom badge on my blog from a site called Postpartum Progress, which I credit with really having helped me get through this. And what it said until about 3 weeks ago is, I am surviving postpartum depression, and you can too. And about 3 weeks ago, I changed it, and it now says, I survived. And in the spirit of brutal honesty, I will tell you that I went back to work 3 weeks ago, and I am having a hell of a time. Because I finally, after 3 years, got to the point where I enjoy spending time with my son, and I have to walk out the door every morning and leave him. And I have discovered what it means to make a life-changing difference for somebody else. And I'm trying to figure out how to do that on a daily basis in a way that is bigger than what I can do with my small blog. So that's why I'm here today, is just to share this story with you about brutal honesty. So think about the mask that you wear and what would happen if you took it off. You might stand up in front of a room full of strangers and cry. And I will tell you, that's not so bad. I've done far worse. My new motto as a result of living this experience is, live the life you're meant to. We all know that life is too short. You were put on this earth to do something. You may have had an experience that you didn't want, didn't anticipate, but maybe that was the experience that's going to put you in the driver's seat and let you do something that will change the life for somebody else.